What's good, YouTube? My name is Velikan. In this video, we are going to be talking about Leagues IV, specifically about the Combat Relics, and because those Combat Relics are going to tie heavily into your area choice, we are going to present a route to you, multiple routes actually, per Combat Relic. So, I made this video before, this exact same video, but it had a couple of mistakes. I will be talking about this briefly, but we haven't got much time to waste because the other video already lasted 36 minutes. This one is likely to be even longer, and I don't want you to stick around for too long. So, what's in this video? I'm going to present some paths to you that you can take during Leagues IV. You'll probably get the gist of it in a minute. What this is not, it's not a guide for Leagues. I will not be telling you that you can get a rune axe from Tree Spirits. I won't be telling you that you can get 10k from the Stronghold and you should go there right after you spawn into Leagues. I'm not going to be explaining Leagues and why you should play it, and we're not going to be talking about the rewards of Leagues. So if you, one more thing about the old video, what you need to know is I made a bunch of mistakes, and in this video I would highly recommend you to read the video description. If there are some additional points of information, I'm probably going to add them there. I don't want to keep uploading the same video over and over again every time I want to correct one mistake, so keep that in mind. In the old video, I omitted some information that I should not have omitted, and I dismissed the wilderness completely. The biggest mistake that I made, the biggest oversight, was the blowpipe and the darts one. I will be correcting that in this video. All the information should be in this video, so I don't want to have people watching two videos to get the entire picture. Therefore, I will delist the old video. This time around, though, if you have seen the old video, we will be considering the wilderness as an area, but we will be only considering it for PVM unlocks. So about the wilderness. Well, I don't need to tell you it's a PvP area, but I will. I believe that there's a huge amount of people that will deliberately avoid the wilderness because it's PvP, including myself. I believe the people who do consider the wilderness don't consider it only because of its PvM potential. Because of that, I initially ignored the wilderness. In this video, I will be taking it into consideration. Keep in mind, though, I do not PvP at all. I cannot tell you how the weapons are going to be used in PvP during Leagues. Therefore, we will be only considering specific items for PvM, like the Void Waker. It says Walker, it should be saying Waker, or God Capes. A couple of notes of interest. Comments in the old video have mentioned I should not bank on attack speed halving. I'm still going to do that because it's just a guess. Because we had those in Leagues too. I'm just going to assume for the sake of this video that we're going to get them in Leagues IV. I don't intend to keep theorycrafting unless Jagex starts to confirm any information, relics or otherwise. At the end of this video, I will be presenting some talking points about the potential future of possible theory crafting videos. I will make chapters, video chapters for this video as well, so you can just click ahead if you're only interested in that. If you are only interested in that. Also, if you have seen the previous video, I initially tried to make this video by giving everyone credit for all of their questions, but this presentation is already quite messy. It became much worse with crediting everyone, so I'm just not going to do that. I am sorry, it's just the way it is. So there's one thing I do want to say that I haven't said in the old video. Suboptimal is perfectly fine in Leagues. You can play around with a weapon like the Elder Maul and you are still going to destroy every piece of content. It's still going to be fun. People have been mentioning various items that they want to get, and it's all perfectly fine. There are almost no wrong picks in Leagues. So there's some resources. I will be putting these in the video description. So what is Leagues IV? As of right now, what we do know is that it's based on Leagues II. However, there are going to be many changes to the task list, relics, and the inclusion of new content from the updates since 2020. That means the additions of Thralls, Hard Mode TOB, combat achievements, some minigames, necks, tombs, wildy bosses, Muspa, and DT2 bosses. A small note about combat achievements. I initially thought combat achievements would be quite strong. However, after close review, I would class them as weak. Keep in mind that combat achievements may require Asgarnia in order for you to be able to claim your rewards. Because you are not going to have access to all the bosses, getting Grandmaster is probably impossible. I would say getting Master and Elite may also be impossible. I am not 100% sure. But even then, if you take a look at the rewards, you're going to get more cannonballs in a cannon. I don't think you're going to cannon much in leagues. If you are, do you really need more cannonballs? The God Wars Dungeon teleport through your hilt is probably going to become obsolete because of Last Recall. I'm fairly certain we're going to get a variation of Last Recall. You're going to get more pest control points, which is probably the most interesting thing of this list. I would say pest control is something you want to do early anyway. You might not have time to do the combat achievements first and then do pest control after. I suspect pest control will dwindle in popularity the longer the league goes on. So I think if you're in the zone that has pest control, you want to do it early. Somewhere in the first 2 or 3 weeks, I would say. Then no Barrow's Prayer Drain. Sure, I don't really care that much, I don't think. Half NMZ costs. So NMZ is disabled. You could buy points for 1 GP per point in Leagues 2. This will save you, if you have a 1.2 million imbue, it will save you 600k GP. It's nice, but think about what you're going to imbue in Leagues. Are you going to have a Slayer Helm? Are you going to have a ring? Keep that in mind. Generally, I would say CA rewards are weak. So about Leagues 2, the Tier 3 relics. This is basically what the video is going to be about. So you've got Quick Shot, Fluid Strikes, and Double Cast. What you need to know about these relics, if you haven't played Leagues 2, is that the attack speed of all ranged weapons, melee weapons, or magic weapons are halved, rounded up. So a 5-tick weapon becomes a 3-tick weapon, and a 4-tick weapon becomes a 2-tick weapon. The choice in this tier will tie heavily into any other area choices. I also think that this relic discourages tri-breeding. You go all in on one style for the entirety of the league. Why? Because all 3 relics get increased accuracy bonus. Specifically, Quick Shot and Double Cast get a huge accuracy bonus. So we're going to be taking a look at the Double Cast first. 90% of runes saved is extremely strong early game. It's very nice. Then for ranged, you're going to get a 100% increased accuracy. That is insane. If you compare it to the main game, ranged is relatively accurate already. Getting a 100% increase is bonkers. Specifically, the blowpipe is going to go nuclear, I would say. Then you get ammo save for ranged. Getting a backpack might be a challenge in leagues. If you have Fremennik, you're going to get an assembler. You're going to sit at a 98% arrow save. The accumulator is unlocked if you go Fremennik. If you don't go Fremennik, and if you want an accumulator, you're going to have to go Morytania for the quest Animal Magnetism. As for Mage, the 125% increased accuracy is, it's super good, but Mage is pretty much unviable in the main game unless you have something like a Tumakin. You don't want to use a Trident on Bandos, for instance. So I would argue that the 125% increased accuracy for Magic is necessary and not insane. What is nice, though, is the 100% chance to freeze. However, I don't think you're going to be freezing much, especially late game. Freezing Bandos, it might be fun, but let's say you're going to have to grind out 500 KC. With Fluid Strikes, you're literally just going to destroy him, and I don't think you... basically what I'm saying is, even with Mage, you're probably going to be face tanking him anyway. Then for melee, you're going to be sitting at 50% less damage for melee. I don't think it's that interesting. Combined with a 4x HP regen, it might be okay-ish. Sure, we'll take it, I guess. So tier 6 relics, Draining Strikes, Exploding Attacks, and Weapon Specialist. In my old video, I talked about these extensively. I don't think we need to talk about these, actually, except for Weapon Specialist. So why don't I want to talk about Draining Strikes and Exploding Attacks? There's very much to say about this, and Jagex hasn't confirmed anything. If they are switching any of this up, we are basically wasting time here. However, we do have to talk about Weapon Specialist. We just have to, because that has repercussions for your area decisions. Why? Because of BGS. and maybe Dragon Warhammer. So Weapon Specialist, it caps your special attack cost to 20%, which means you can spec 5 times. BGS with this is insane, especially if you pick Fluid Strikes as a tier 3. You're gonna go apeshit on everything. You're gonna teleport in, spec 5 times, and you're gonna destroy everything basically. The one alternative to BGS is the Dragon Warhammer. I will be speaking about this in a second. And then you might want to consider SGS or perhaps even Eldritch Staff, but I wouldn't bank on this for healing. Keep in mind though that if you're healing, your spec usage slices into your BGS usage. Like I already said, BGS plus Weapon Specialist is going to be insane, especially for melee. And lastly, this is a new addition compared to the old video, the Voidwalker, the Voidwaker, is absolutely worth mentioning. It is the best spec weapon in the main game. Being able to spec 5 times will be more than just okay-ish. It will be probably optimal, actually. It might overtake the BGS. I'm not sure if that's a safe assessment, but the Voidwaker is definitely worth mentioning here. Okay, so about areas. In Leagues 2, the popular combination was Kandarin, Asgarnia, Morytania. Why? Because it was optimal for melee and all the content was in these 3 areas. So for a melee route, the whip is available at Mistlin. You don't need Morytania for a whip. If you're a new player, this is probably quite valuable information for you. Karamja gives fire and Inferno Cape. We already knew that. Piety, however, requires both Asgarnia and Kandarin. This is important to know. Piety is an extreme DPS increase, and it requires 2 areas. Asgarnia is packed for melees. It gives Defenders, Bandos, BGS, SGS, Prims, Maxcape, and now with Leagues 4, it's going to give Torva. Someone in my old video asked, doesn't Nex require Desert as well? And even though this guy is correct, Mod Halo has replied on Discord that they've got something in place for Nex that makes it so that Nex does not require 2 regions. So I'm going to assume Nex is going to be in Asgarnia and you don't need Desert for it. I would argue that Asgarnia is mandatory for melee users. Kandarin. Combination of Kandarin and Asgarnia gives Piety, like I already said. Kandarin also gives an early Dragon Scimitar because picking Kandarin will unlock Monkey Madness 2 immediately for you. Kandarin also gives Zenites. Morytania initially gave Barrow's Gear, Slayer Helmet, Inquisitor, Scythe, Rapier, Vernick, and Blood Fury. If you think about foregoing Bandos Gear and shoot straight for Inquisitor, Asgarnia still gives you a Defender. If you think you are going to be using a 2-hander instead and you don't want to use the Defender, you're still going to be grinding Theater and Nightmare in Barrow's Gear. It is possible technically, but even then you're still missing Piety and BGS. If you're a meleeer and if we're going to get Last Recall, I think you're just going to be wanting to teleport in, BGS 5 times, finish the boss and teleport out to your POH in order to heal. Not picking Asgarnia is just a grief, I would say. That's my argument. Not picking Asgarnia is a hard grief. Okay, Tyranwin gives Saildor, Serp Helmet, although I don't think Serp Helmet is that interesting. Not to mention, Zulra is not meleeable, not even with a halberd, I think. Kourend gives Dragon Warhammer, D-Claws, Thralls, and the DHL requires Asgarnia and Kandarin. Ferocious Gloves if you are available if you go Fremennik. So Dragon Hunter Lance, you're going to need the Zami Spear from Krill, but you're also going to need Otto Godblessed. So it requires Kourend, Asgarnia, and Kandarin. If you go Morytania plus Kourend, you may end up with Barrow's Gear, Inquisitor, Scythe, and a Dragon Warhammer. It would mean that you don't need Asgarnia. You're going to be skipping Bandos, Torva, Defender, BGS. You're only missing Piety with this combination. However, Kourend is then only picked for Dragon Warhammer to substitute BGS. And I would say if that's the only reason why you would go Kourend, Kourend makes that quite a weak pick, I would say. Then the Desert, it has the Fang and the Lightbearer. It doesn't have the Ancient Rings because the Ancient Rings require Fremennik, and Ultor actually requires both a Desert, Fremennik, and Kourend, which is an invalid route, if you ask me. I initially thought the Fang would be quite strong. I changed my opinion on that. I would think that even though the Fang is going to be an excellent weapon in leagues, there are almost no bad weapons in League. Fang is not that good. It's a 5-tick, it becomes a 3-tick, and then the increased accuracy is okay, but we already have 25% increased accuracy. It's not great, so to say. Then we've got the Voidwaker in the Wilderness, probably one of the best weapons actually in Leagues IV. So, what do we do? What are our options? You pick Kandarin first for your D-skim. Then the options are Asgarnia, Kandarin, Morytania, which I think is still the best route. The alternative is Asgarnia, Kandarin, Wilderness, which is probably on par with the best route. Basically, the gist of your melee route is going to be Asgarnia, Kandarin, and a free pick. That's basically how you should be looking at the melee route, I would say. Asgarnia, Kandarin Desert, I mentioned it deliberately and separately because in my old video I would say it was on par with the best route. However, now that I class Fang weaker and Wilderness is included into the mix of consideration, I would say it is not on par with the best route. So I think Desert is a suboptimal pick. It's not a bad one. Don't make that mistake by thinking, the Fang is going to be bad in leagues. It's not going to be bad. Not at all. The alternative might be Morytania, Kourend, and then a free pick. It will give you Barrows, Inquisitor Scythe, Dragon Warhammer, and maybe an option for Ferocious Gloves, whatever you want. Keep in mind, though, if you want to go Morytania, I think it's quite a leap, and it requires determination. You're going to have to go Barrows. You're going to have to do Barrows without quick casts. Even though with Fluid Strikes, you can definitely melee the brothers. Keep in mind that you do not have a Dragon Scimitar. Kourend is only there to offset the lack of a BGS, and I would say it's not a particularly good route, I would argue. So about the desert, lots of people are talking about the desert now. People think that it's a beefy area. They're not that wrong, actually. So in Leagues II, a lot of the desert tasks were about KQ and MTA. Especially MTA, it just sucks. It still sucks, even with relics, it just sucks. It's bad, suck, basically. MTA, no good. Keep that in mind. Because in Leagues II, I initially said that MTA is bad. You're going to be stuck doing MTA and getting Skirk juices. But I completely forgot about Temporos and Giant's Foundry. And people have been mentioning that in the old video. It's likely to fix any point problem. Keep in mind, though, that for all these minigames, the content itself may not be buffed by any relics. So you're going to have to think about if you're wanting to do Temporos for tasks or Giant's Foundry for tasks. For points, actually, I should say. So keep that in mind. I personally don't like Temporos at all. So that's a good way to ruin your League's experience. Keep that in mind. About Kourend, I have said multiple times already that the Dragon Warhammer is a substitute to BGS. Don't forget where the Dragon Warhammer comes from. It's a 1 in 5,000 drop. If we're going to 2x and 3x our drop rate, it's still going to be quite the grind. Also keep in mind that the melee relic only gives us a 25% accuracy bonus. The BGS benefits from this much more than the Dragon Warhammer does. So when we're talking about Kourend, the next thing people want to talk about is the T-bow. People stare at the T-bow. It's going to be a great weapon. However, Rigor is a much likelier drop, and it's probably more of a DPS increase than the T-bow is going to be. Thralls, on the other hand, they are okay, but if no relic is buffing the Thralls, the DPS increase is worse than it is in the main game because the player is much, much stronger. Also, in the main game, Thralls are a bigger DPS increase on high defense monsters. Accuracy is buffed in leagues, and therefore Thralls will be even weaker. So Thralls are not bad, but it's going to be like somewhere between a 5 or 10% increase in damage. Actually, no, that's completely wrong. I would say somewhere between 5 and 1%, actually. I don't believe Thralls is going to be a 10% increase anywhere, not in leagues. Okay, the ranged route. Asgarnia gives Arma, ACB, ZCB, Z-Vamps. It is a extremely strong pick. Kandarin gives Zenites and Heavy Ballista. We will be specifically talking about the Ballista in a second. Desert gives Masori. You can fortify your Masori with combination of Desert and Asgarnia. Fremennik gives Archer Rings. I think those are going to be weak because of the relic bonus accuracy. You're going to get plus 100%. You don't need the Archer Ring, I would say. Morytania gives Barrows. Barrows is okay, however, it's not required. I think you can leap towards armor gear with just Black D'hide. I think you'll be perfectly fine grinding that gear in Black D'hide. Then the big one, Tyranwin. It gives Blowpipe, and it also gives Bowfa and Crystal Armor. I initially said that the Blowpipe requires the Desert, because this is true in Leagues 2. However, I forgot that now, in Leagues 4, we're going to have access to Amethyst darts, so the Blowpipe pick needs Asgarnia or Desert. Not just Desert. Kourend gives the big purple, the T-bow. It also gives Rigor. Rigor is probably going to be incredible. The T-bow is strong, but keep in mind, because it's a 5-tick weapon, the relics don't buff it as hard as a Bowfa or a Blowpipe gets buffed. The Blowpipe, for comparison, is a 1-tick weapon, which is going to be completely insane. The Bowfa is going to be a 2-tick weapon, which is going to be insane as well. The Wilderness gives us a Webweaver bow. That might actually be a fun spec weapon. That's all I have to say about the Wilderness, to be honest. So about darts, I completely mucked up this part of the presentation in the last video. I said that you're going to have to need deserts. You're going to have to need the desert area. I changed it because someone mentioned that you can get amethyst darts in the mining guild, and you do not need tourist trap for that, which is absolutely correct. You only need tourist trap if you're going to be smithing any darts, and you can smith them up to rune. I would argue that even though amethysts are better, runes are absolutely extremely viable as well. So the conclusion is Blowpipe needs Desert or Asgarnia. And from those two, I would say Asgarnia is probably the stronger pick. There are some dart drops in the game, but I would say these are almost all too little or too low of a drop rate. Keep in mind that this drop rate is not buffed by the Leagues multiplier, because only rare items are dropped, I'm pretty sure. So the Chaos Elemental is the only one in the list that I would say drops a fair amount of Mithril Darts. Keep in mind that Mithril Darts is quite a step down from Amethyst and Rune. It drops 300 darts. With a 90% ammo save, I would say it's probably not enough. You're going to be grinding Chaos Elemental a lot if you want to go this combination. Then lots of people have been mentioning Vorkath. This is the exact same thing what happened 3 years ago in Leagues 2. People were saying Fremennik is a viable alternative to Desert if you want to go the Blowpipe route. I would say that it's probably possible, but you're going to have to think that through. Because the Blowpipe will be a 1-tick weapon. With the Assembler, you will save 98% of your shots. 50 darts is going to mean 2,500 darts, effective darts. If that's a 1-tick weapon, it will only last you 25 minutes of full-time use. You're going to be grinding Vorkath a lot just for darts, I would say. It's definitely possible, but it might be a mistake. Being able to smith just a boatload of darts or being able to craft them is probably going to be a lot better for most people. So keep that in mind. Think about this. Use some math because you can just because it's a 1-tick weapon. You know how much dart tips are going to be dropping from Vorkath. You can just do some maths. Okay, so what do we have for our range routes? One small thing of note, the knives are actually a very good early range weapon. Then, Tyranwin with either Desert or Asgarnia plus Kourend is probably going to be the best route. It gives us Blowpipe, Bowfa, Masori, or Arma. If you go Asgarnia, you're going to get ZCB and Z-Vamps. And with Kourend you get Rigger, Thralls, and T-Bow. Out of this route, I would probably say Asgarnia's is the stronger one. I would pick Asgarnia over Desert, so it would be Tyranwin, Asgarnia, Kourend. A valid alternative is Tyranwin, Desert, Asgarnia. It will give you the Blowpipe, the Bowfa, the Fortified Missouri, ZCB, Z-Vamps, and Pegations. Pegations are actually in Asgarnia, so you can get Pegations as well with the best route. However, good luck getting Pegations. You're going to need Ranger Boots for that. The combination of Desert and Asgarnia is picked for Fortifying Missouri. Keep in mind that Asgarnia also gives you BGS, so you can actually mix it up with Weapon Specialist if you want to do that. However, Weapon Specialist will be weaker. Quick Shots bonus accuracy is already 100%, so you're going to be benefiting from the defense reduction a lot less. And then your melee whack with the BGS will lack a little bit of melee accuracy. It will not be bad, but I would argue that the BGS and Weapon Specialist is not necessary for ranged, not at all. Ultimately, it will be a combination of Tyranwin, Desert, or Asgarnia, and a free pick. That's basically what you can do. Your gear will be Bowfa, Blowpipe, and Missouri if Desert, Arma if Asgarnia, and then your options are maybe Kandarin for Zenite gear. I would say Morytania is a bad pick. It's obsolete. It gives us Carols, which you don't need because you're getting your armor from either the Desert or Asgarnia. And then, of course, Kourend gives T-Bow, Rigger, and Thralls. If you want to go Wilderness, for example, this is a good place to pick it in your free pick. So, the Kourend Desert Asgarnia route is actually quite valid as well. It's an alternative route. It will give you T-Bow, Rigger, Fortified Missouri, ZCB, Z-Vamps, and Pegations. Keep in mind about the T-Bow though. Grinding out the T-Bow is still a significant effort. I don't know the exact drop rate from the top of my head. If it's a 1 in 1,000 drop, it is going to be a 1 in 333 in leagues, which might mean that you're going to go 600 Chambers KC dry. That's going to suck. You might actually never going to get a T-Bow. So don't stare yourself blind on the T-Bow. However, the Blowpipe, on the other hand, is actually very attainable. And I think because of the ranged relic accuracy bonus, it will be a crazy, crazy weapon. A one-tick weapon, relatively accurate, is going to be great. As for the Bowfa is going to be a 4-tick weapon. And in leagues is going to be a 2-tick. The accuracy bonus of the ranged relic will kind of quote-unquote hurt the Bowfa because it's super accurate in the main game. That's why people use it. And the accuracy is, well, arguably wasted. However, the Bowfa is not going to be weak at all. The Bowfa might actually be better. Some people have been mentioning it will be good on the melee and mage hands, on Chambers, on Olm specifically, because of the ridiculous accuracy. I don't know if that is correct, but keep in mind that the Bowfa is probably going to be a beast of a weapon. One more thing about the Bowfa, it has crystal charges. Do not forget this, please. Then, Desert Asgarnia Fremennik. It's arguably valid because it gives us the Bellator Ring, Fortified Missouri, ZCB, and an option for a Venator bow. Your best weapon is going to be a crossbow. That is not weak by any stretch of the imagination, but it's not exactly flashy. So it's just lame, specifically if you compare it to a blowpipe. But it's not going to be bad. Not at all. So, Heavy Ballista. Probably my favorite part of this video. I love talking about this. When I was exploring this, I didn't realize that some people actually think that the Heavy Ballista might be the best weapon in the game, even stronger than T-Bow. I don't know. I simply just do not know if this is the case. However, the Heavy Ballista benefits greatly if the attack speed is halved. So let's talk about it a little bit. Kandarin gives us Zenites, but it also opens up the Heavy Ballista. You're going to get a 3-tick Ballista, which might be up your alley. I like the idea because I'm a little bit of a snowflake, and I don't think anyone will do this in leagues. So, about the Ballista. It requires Monkey Madness 2, access to Ape Atoll perhaps, and the Tree Gnome Village. This is all within Kandarin. It drops completely from Demonic Gorillas. This will be a little bit of a grind, admittedly. Javelins are not compatible with the Assembler in the main game. However, I do think they may be compatible with the ranged relic. Dragon Javelin heads are dropped by Desert Treasure 2 bosses. That would need the addition of Desert and Fremennik. Actually, that's not true. With just the Desert, you get access to the Leviathan. The Leviathan is in Mistalin, which is an auto-unlock. The Desert will leave you with Masori, but without a Bellator Ring. Even if you go Desert Fremennik, you cannot get a Bellator Ring, which I think is no big deal at all. Rune Javelins can be bought from the Ranging Guild. This is also within Kandarin, and they're probably going to be strong enough. So Kandarin just encapsulates the entire option called the Heavy Ballista. If you opt for the Heavy Ballista as your primary weapon, all you really need is armor. This gives you a few options. Morytania for Carols, Desert for Masori, Asgarnia for Arma. You can also go Tyrannuin for Crystal, but I would say that would be a mistake. Grinding out Crystal might be a little bit more of a grind than you initially think. Keep in mind that Tyrannuin also gives you the Bowfa, and then you could argue why pick Kandarin at all. Not to mention, Crystal Armor also requires shards. I don't think you will be burning through these shards, but keep that in mind still. And then you should consider Kourend for Rigor. Kourend means T-bow, and the Ballista is now like a weapon you would use before the T-bow. And the T-bow is still a significant grind, so I think Kandarin Kourend is actually valid. So from here, because you need armor, your options are Kandarin Morytania, Kandarin Asgardia, or Kandarin Desert, and then you get a free pick as your third area. I think Kourend is a perfectly fine pick. So that was my talk about the Heavy Ballista. In summary, in order to pick a ranged route, you have to just decide on a weapon. If you've decided on a weapon, you can just decide on armor, and from there you probably have at least 2 areas locked down. You can just decide on your final area by whatever unique you want to get there. Or maybe there is a third area that will give you like a specific unlock between areas. There's one special mention. Someone mentioned the Dark Bow, which I think is in either Kandarin or Tyrannuin, because you can go there in the Iworth dungeon and in West Ardi, I would say. Excuse me. The Dark Bow, it will not be bad. It might be suboptimal, I'm not sure. That's because the Dark Bow isn't that good in the main game. I just don't see how good it will be in Leagues. However, it benefits heavily from halved attack speed. The Dark Bow spec will also be fairly decent. I wouldn't main the Dark Bow, but if you're going to main the Dark Bow, I would say get a Dragon Arrow source. That's all I have to say about the Dark Bow. As for magic routes are just Tumakan. Everyone talks about the big item, Tumakan. However, there is more to it. The magic route is interesting, I would say, because it skips God Wars dungeons. If you don't want to grind God Wars dungeons, magic route is actually quite valid. Interesting zones for magic are Desert for the obvious reason, Tumakan. But don't forget it gives Ancients and Virtus Robes, and we're going to be talking about Virtus Robes in a second. The most interesting zone for magic is Kandarin. It gives you Trident, Zenites, Ibans, Occult. Actually, hold on. Zenites and Occult. And then Ibans, I'm not sure if you can get Ibans in Kandarin. This has been a point of discussion. But actually, who cares? Because the Warped Scepter is in Kandarin. Someone mentioned this in one of the comments in the old video. Thank you for that, because the Warped Scepter is actually a beast weapon before Trident. And it's also just in Kandarin. One small thing, the Warped Scepter needs what's it called? The Path of Glue-Free, I think it's called, the quest. It has been confirmed in the Jagex FAQ that you can just do the entire quest entirely within Kandarin. So the Warped Scepter is confirmed to be in Kandarin. Previously, people would go Morytania because it was arguably a must. Arims was best in slot. Desert and Kourend now both provide alternatives. The Desert gives us Virtus robes, and with unlocking just the Desert, we should have access to Leviathan, which should be in Mistlin. Fremennik and Desert gives the Magus Ring. I initially said that this wasn't worth. It's actually 100% worth. Ancestral gives us a 6% damage bonus. Augury does nothing for max damage. Virtus gives us a 3% damage bonus. The Magus Ring gives a 2%, but Fremennik gives us access to the Saturated Heart. Those +3 levels that Saturated Heart gives over the Imbued Heart are likely going to be better than the missing 1% damage increase from Ancestral. However, Ancestral, even though it's not better than Virtus, Kourend gives us Thralls. So I would say the difference between Virtus and Ancestral is marginal. You could argue that getting Magus, Virtus, and Saturated Heart is quite a grind. You could also argue that Ancestral is quite a grind. So think about it. Think about it good. Give it a good think. Turanwin gives us Trident of the Swamp. This was good in Leagues 2, but it's the only thing in Turanwin. Keep that in mind. Kourend gives Ancestral and Augury. Augury doesn't do anything for max damage. That's a mistake a lot of people make. Invisible levels do nothing for max damage. So your Trident is not going to do any more damage if you flick Augury. Morytania gives Arims, but not only Arims. It gives the Sangstaff and the Nightmare Staves. Those are going to be quite a grind, but not bad at all. The Wilderness gives God Capes. That's actually quite interesting. So, Magic has the least use for Weapon Specialist. You do not need a BGS or a Dragon Warhammer. Without Morytania in the form of an Eldritch Staff, Weapon Specialist is actually probably completely useless. Kandarin gives Occult and Bracelet. Those are the single 2 best upgrades for Magic, DPS-wise. So Kandarin is strongly recommended in any of the Magic routes. So the weapons, Tumakin's Trident, Kodai, Sang, Nightmare Stave, Arims. The armor, Ancestral, Arims, and Virtus. So like I said, this is a summary. Virtus plus Magus plus Saturated Heart is probably going to be the same DPS as Ancestral and Thralls. The difference, I would say, is marginal. The Desert plus Kandarin plus Fremennik is probably going to be the best route. It will give us Tumakin, Virtus, Ancients, Tormented, Occult, Trident/Warped, Magus Ring, and the Saturated Heart. One alternative is replacing Fremennik with the Wildy, which takes away the ring and the heart, but gives us a God Cape. I would say this is probably on par with the best route. Keep in mind though, the Wilderness is a PvP area. You gotta love it. I don't. Then the last alternative would be Kourend instead. That would give us Ancestral, Augury, and Thralls. It's going to be probably a toss-up between these 3 routes, the ones in green. Fremennik, Wildy, or Kourend as your third pick. One alternative is the Morytania, Kandarin, and then a free pick. It gives you Arims, Sang, Nightmare Staff, Tormented Bracelet, Occult, Trident, and then whatever you want to get. You can get Ancestral plus Augury and Kourend. You can get a Tumakin in the Desert, Ancients, Virtus Robes as well. However, keep in mind that your Desert pick will probably clash with your Morytania pick. It makes Arims, Sang, and the Nightmare Staves maybe even obsolete because of the Virtus Robes. You can go to Turanwin for the Swamp Staff. The Swamp Staff is relatively easy to get. I would say Turanwin still is a weak pick because you're in Morytania this way around. You're probably gonna replace your Swamp Staff with a Sang or a Nightmare Stave. And then, of course, the Wilderness for a God Cape. Very good area indeed. So about Morytania, we have to talk about this. We all know about Barrows, but Morytania is a tough area in Leagues. It has a lot of the gear for both melee and magic, great gear. However, it is locked behind Theater and the Nightmare. Theater specifically might still be a challenge to solo. I know it's possible to solo it in the main game. I know it's possible to solo it much easier in Leagues. However, I don't know how difficult it is to solo Theater in Leagues. I just don't know. I'm not sure. That means you might need groups. For some people, including myself, finding groups is a completely different challenge. I hate it, and I don't want to do it. That means for me personally, Morytania is an extremely tough area. However, if you've got a group ready, this area is going to be great. It's going to be good in terms of item drops, and it's just going to be fun. It's guaranteed fun in groups. The summary of the magic route. Kandarin is a must pick. Not picking Kandarin, in my opinion, is a grief. From here, just decide on a weapon. Swamp Staff, Tumakin, Nightmare Stave, Sang Staff. Pick one of those areas. Some armor options are Arims, Lunar, Void, Dagenhai, which I think is probably weak, Ancestral. Keep in mind, though, that Kandarin also has Mystics, and you'll be running around in that for a relatively long time. The desert is a very strong area for magic, but if you really don't want to go desert, you can go. You can do without the desert pick. Also, don't forget, we talk about Ancestral as if it's easy to get. It's quite the grind. One person specifically mentioned the use of Tome of Fire. I am not sold on the Tome of Fire. It is high DPS, however. You have to charge your Tome of Fire with burnt pages. Each page adds 20 charges. You'll be burning through these pages with the attack speed you have in Leagues. Also, without a harm staff, your fire spells are 5 tick, which means if you have a trident, which is going to be 4 tick, it's a 2 tick versus a 3 tick, which is a 50% difference. So that's... let's just say that my conclusion is that the Tome of Fire is probably not going to be that strong. About Desert Treasure 2 bosses, you need Fremennik for the base rings. You need Desert Treasure 2 for the bosses. And then for Dorfis, Kourend, Whisper, Asgarnia, Duke, Fremennik, and Leviathan in Mistlin. Mistlin is free. That gives us a couple of options. The Ultor Ring is attainable if you go Desert, Kourend, and Fremennik. However, I don't think that that's a valid combination for melee builds. The Magus Ring is in Desert and Fremennik. This is very valid. It's more than just valid. It's extremely good. The Bellator Ring requires Desert, Asgarnia, Fremennik. That would mean you would get Fortified Masori, ZCB, Assembler, Venator Bow for some flexibility. That's an okay route. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. If you want to do that, go for it. Unfortunately, the Soul Reaper axe is unavailable. You're going to need 4 area unlocks for the Soul Reaper axe. You're just not getting it in Leagues 4, unfortunately. So how do you decide on an area? Basically, what you need to do is you need to decide, are you playing for points / Dragon Cup? If you are, you're going to have to pick areas that have the most tasks / points. This is significant because we learned from Leagues 2 that, for instance, the desert back then had a lot less points available. We cannot say anything for certain until Jagex confirms the tasks, and the tasks are probably going to be on the OSRS wiki. Take a look at that and decide your areas from there. If you're going to be playing Leagues for fun or for learning PVM, you can learn the Inferno, Chambers, Theater, Tombs, Corrupted Gauntlet, Nightmare, and probably much more in Leagues. If you want to do one of these things, this will probably lock down at least one area for you. This may also lock down your Combat Relic. Keep in mind, though, that because of the accuracy bonus the Tier 3 relics are going to give you, you can mage some content that's only ranged in the main game and vice versa. There's an unknown 7th relic coming for Leagues 4. We don't know what it is. I suspect it will be a combat relic. There's not much more that I can say about this. I don't think it will impact the area choice that much, but who knows. Combat couple of more things. Do not rush high-level areas. I see some people on Reddit saying, oh, I want to grind Corrupt Gauntlet. I'm going to pick Thranduin as my first area. Now you're level 3 and you're sitting in Privdenas. Wow, that's quite the mistake you've made. Just think about what you're going to do. Don't immediately pick your initial starting area. Please keep in mind that tasks and points are a thing. If you decide on an area, you might want a task-heavy area first. I initially said that the desert might be a trap area. However, with the addition of Temporos and Giant's Foundry, it's probably going to be just fine. So how do you decide on relics? There's no point, really. You don't know what the 7th relic is. We don't know how much Leagues 2 relics will be buffed and nerfed or changed. So there's no real point in deciding. However, if you are susceptible to disappointment and regret, like myself, formulate a plan. Either you completely wing it or you make a plan. If you're making a plan, don't half-ass your plan. That's such a mistake. Think about it, write it down, and really strategize. You really have to do that. If you don't know what you want to do, popular players will probably publish some guides. In the past, Zulu and Wooks have done this for Leagues 2. I think Foe has done this as well. Probably a lot more people, especially the streamers, are going to be publishing whatever they are going to do. So keep an eye out. What am I personally going to do? I am not sure. There's no point in deciding just yet. I tend to be a little bit of a snowflake, so I am considering a magic route. This time around, lots of more people are going to pick magic, I think, because of Tumakin. However, I'm pretty sure melee is probably still going to be picked by most people. My goals for this league are probably learning solo chambers and Inferno. I think magic is still valid for this. I am not sure I'm going to be farming chambers. I just want to be learning it. Therefore, I don't really... Like, all I really need for learning chambers is the infinite run energy, I would say. So I'm not really too hung up on which route I'm going to take. However, it's probably going to include Kourend. As for the near future, in regards to making YouTube videos and theory crafting deep dives, if Jagex decides on changing combat relics, some parts of this guide will become obsolete. Some people are talking about a 6th area unlock. If this happens, most of this guide actually becomes obsolete. However, Jagex has confirmed that they will not give us a 6th area. This is in the FAQ for Leagues 4. If you just Google OSRS Leagues 4, you're going to find this website. It's on the official RuneScape.com webpage. We will not be getting a 6th area. Even though I re-released this video, I don't intend on theory crafting much if Jagex doesn't confirm anything. So they have to confirm some stuff before I will continue uploading a lot more videos at least. They may confirm relics or tasks very late. If you read the FAQ, you just get this feeling that they don't want to give us everything just yet. They might be very late in this. However, you can still decide on your route days after launch even. So it doesn't matter when Jagex is going to give us all the information. Just make sure that you're going to be watching any videos if you like them. Right now, we only know the areas. That's why I did this video. I did consider doing a deep dive on these areas, because the areas is like the only thing we know for a fact. That's what we're going to get in Leagues 4. However, right now I'm deciding against making a deep dive on the areas themselves, like what POIs are there and what skilling options are there, because being exhaustive is almost impossible. It is really, really difficult to give a complete overview about all areas. Not to mention, if I forget something, people are going to be picking it apart. I don't mind, but the video is going to get obsolete very fast. I might have to redo those videos over and over again in order to get them in a state where I'm happy with them. It's going to be such a task, and I decide against doing that because all the information really is on the wiki. And what I want to do with these videos is I want to give you guys insight on certain specifics that are not at least blatantly on the wiki. So there's that. This video is almost 50 minutes. I'm gonna, this is basically the last thing I want to talk about. I'm not gonna be holding you up much longer. If you, so the last thing I want to say is, if you have watched the old video, I'm sorry you had to watch almost the exact same video twice. However, this one is probably much better in terms of the content and information that's in them. So there's that. Anyways, bye bye. I will see you in the next video, hopefully. Thank you for watching.